All right. Well, I would like to welcome everybody back to the Acres of Diamonds podcast, where we like to have powerful conversations with interesting people. And today's guest is Raina Daly, and she is the Learning and Talent Development Leader for Onbe, a certified business coach, and a DEI expert. Raina, welcome to the show.
Hey, hello everyone.
All right. So, Raina, here's what I'm thinking. I was doing some research and I came upon something that I think is super important that I think you might think is important as well.
Okay.
And that is soft skills,
Oh yeah.
right? Soft skills. So, what I was thinking we could start with is what are soft skills and why are they so important in today's world?
So soft skills are the intangible social and behavioral skills that you need to succeed at work. Think things like I can communicate well, I am professional, um, I have the ability to connect with others. I have the ability to build relationships and, influence others. Those are all soft skills versus a hard skill would be things like I can hammer a nail and I can, make an Excel spreadsheet. Those are all hard skills. The soft skills are the things you need to be good at the hard skills and succeed in your work.
And are we taught soft skills or are we more taught hard skills? I mean, because like I'm trying to think back to like in my own personal life, it's like when was I taught how to properly communicate with somebody, right? I remember physically being taught how to hammer a nail or make an Excel sheet, right? But
Mhm.
are we lacking teaching soft skills?
In my opinion, yes.
Mhm.
Especially until more recent, you've seen some organizations take a more focused approach to it. But in general, throughout our life, from toddlerhood to through college and beyond, we're taught the hard things, and the soft skills we're supposed to just magically pick up on and learn from. Oh well, you make mistakes, I bet you won't make that mistake again. But that's not realistic, because how many people are taking the time to digest what that cause and effect was
Mhm.
and how they can improve on it, and without guided leadership or somebody taking a purposeful uh, introspective look at themselves, which most people don't. Let's be real. Most people don't. It's just something that we're figuring out our own or learning far into our career, far too late.
Yeah. And what is it about soft skills that make them so important to humans?
So, in a workplace, whether you're in person or virtual, being able to convey yourself clearly, being able to communicate with others, being able to um, build relationships either with your downline or with your leader, all the different soft skills, it's it's what will make or break your career.
Ooh, okay.
Honestly, it will. It doesn't. You have heard a million times of known people. It's like, hey, this person is the top salesperson.
Mhm.
This person is the best at what they do, but I don't want to work with them.
Mm,
And so, therefore, they get passed up for a position and they don't understand why. They want to move up. They don't understand why they're not moving up. Or they lack they can't get to that exceeds expectations. Whatever success is to them, they're being stopped because they haven't developed those soft skills properly.
okay. Wow. So that makes that's a great point, right? This individual might be really good at their job, but they may not be great at being a human.
Right.
Right.
And,
Like,
and interacting with humans. I
yeah.
always like to say adults are 5-year-olds in big bodies.
Oh,
So if you
yes. Yep. We
you
say,
go into a kindergarten classroom, the kids are all over the place, right? And
mhm.
the one kid has the toys, some kids with a book, and one kid is pulling another kid's hair. They're not meant to be emotionally intelligent or have those soft skills. But as adults, now you're a 5-year-old in a big body and you're put in a workplace with other people. You can't pull somebody else's hair. You can't, snatch things from them. You have to learn how to develop those soft skills to be successful.
Yeah, we say adults are just deteriorated children,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's definitely another way to look at it for sure.
So, all right. So these soft skills are really important, right? They are the human connection, not necessarily the hard skills that are more of a very tangible type of thing, right?
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
see it instead of feel it type of work. So, what have you found in your study or your experience that has helped improve the soft skills of the people that you're in charge of helping and serving?
It's a combination of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and emotional resilience.
Mm. So, how do we get better at all three of those?
So, in my opinion, everybody has their own opinion, but in my expert opinion, I would say it starts with self awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with understanding that you are going to be flawed, you are going to have opportunities. And in order to be successful in any aspect of your life, it can't always be someone else's fault. And you have to work on social cues and work on interacting, like you said, being a good human in the workplace, or even in your personal life, even with your partner. You have to work on it. Everything is going to take development, and you have to have self-awareness and have that internal drive and discipline, right,
Yeah.
to make sure that you are focused on it and intentionally building these skills up.
Mm-hmm. You said something offline that I think kind of connects a little bit to this too, was when we are working on our self-awareness, some like I feel like a lot of people don't like to do it.
Mhm.
And there's certain reasons why, right? I don't want to necessarily say my perspective. I'm curious more about like why do we sometimes shy away from actively becoming more self-aware?
Ego.
Mm, yep.
Ego, shame, right? It's ego and pride of I don't want to show any weakness, because and ego and pride sometimes is also rooted in fear,
Mhm.
the fear of being judged, especially in a society we live in today with social media and everyone comparing themselves to each other. I don't want to be judged against someone else. I don't want someone to think that I'm not perfect, even though as humans, we all understand on an intellectual level that perfection doesn't exist. No one wants to show a chink in their armor, especially at work, because the consequences could be dire under the wrong leadership.
Mhm. Now, have you seen examples of leaders, self-aware leaders being vulnerable and basically the effect of that vulnerability?
Absolutely. So, a great example. So, in a prior role, I had a director reporting to me who been in the role for about 10 years, moved up within the organization, but mainly in that director level role. And she was told, hey, your role is being transitioned to a slew of different people, right? This won't exist anymore.
Mm.
And instead of just like reacting and going off, like, what? She used the soft skills and all the different things I worked on her with her resilience and her emotional intelligence to assess, think, pause, and say, okay, what does this mean? Why is this happening? Let me talk to you about where I can add value. I understand that maybe this wasn't the right fit for me long term. And so I can accept that, because that's something you can't change, right? At the end of the day, if that's a decision, that's a decision. Respect it. But let me tell you where I think I can shine. That is where that self awareness really kicked in. And I was like, whoa, she's come a long way. She
Yeah.
said, can I have 48 hours to design a role that I think would not only fit my skills, it would be an added value to the organization. And
Wow.
because of that self awareness
Mhm.
and that professionalism and that resilience in what she was doing, she was granted the time and she ended up getting the role.
Wow.
So she saved her own job.
You really did. And that's such a great example. Thank you for outlining that. And I think too, I'm curious about when you saw her vulnerability, what did that make you think of her?
I actually thought higher of her
Mhm.
because it's usually the individuals who don't show that vulnerability and are afraid to show it. They're typically high performing, low trust employees, meaning they have a lot of kudos for how they perform, but when asked if they are someone their leader or their fellow peers trust, or somebody that they feel like is a good person to work with, right? Somebody you want to grow. It's typically no, but they're a good performer, right? But to me, I saw a true leader. I saw someone who, maybe you couldn't perform in this role, but this was a true leader. And I think that that's a definition and something people are still struggling with, is that manager versus leader, high performer versus somebody who should be a leader. And that's where you really start seeing that genuine internal leadership skills.
Yeah. And so now the interesting thing here is like we have vulnerability from a leadership standpoint, right? Now, what if vulnerability was like a culture or like a trend within a team, right? So now I want to know if there was a team. So say like the people that you're in charge of helping, supporting, right? If they were more vulnerable to each other, what would that look like?
I genuinely believe that productivity would improve and we would hit more deadlines in general, any team, right? The productivity, the collaboration and trust within the team would improve. Yeah, that's it. It would just, things would get better.
And do you
Things
think
would get better because everyone would feel like we're in this together and be comfortable opening up and assisting where one person might be weaker. Hey, I'm stronger in this aspect. Let me help you.
So have you had any programs or experiences that have allowed the people that you're in charge of to be vulnerable? I mean, like, are there things that, right, you create where it's like, hey, we want you guys to realize we're human beings here, right? Because it's going to help with collaboration and trust and productivity, right? So what have you seen has worked in creating that vulnerable space?
A few things. When you're having a team meeting, it shouldn't just be about what's on the docket, like what's going on. Take the time to genuinely have people connect and talk about what's going on in their personal life. Talk about, hey, where were some wins for you? Where were some opportunities? And that is where I've seen the walls come down. Is when you start letting people have a safe space that is internal to the team, right? Not just the organization, but to the team, to say, tell me how you won. Now, what opportunities, what could we have done better? And then not following up with, well, I hope you learned from it.
Yeah.
How can we help you? Asking the peers, what do you think? Is there something you can help in that situation? Really creating that we win or we fail as a team mentality.
I love that. We win or we fail as a team, right? I think that connects huge to vulnerability because when we fail, right, we're going to say, hey, that was on me, right? Or extreme ownership, right? The leader of that group, right? Saying, hey, that's me. So, all right. So I want to take a quick jump over to emotional resilience, just because I know you mentioned self-awareness, emotional resilience, and emotional intelligence. And so I want to get your thoughts around what do you think we are struggling with as a workforce from an emotional resilience standpoint?
I think people confuse emotional resilience with your ability to tolerate stress.
Ooh, okay.
So emotional resilience to me is about your ability to bounce back from challenges and adversity, right? It's not just about how am I coping, how am I getting through it, but it's about genuinely navigating and growing from, and sometimes thriving in challenges, right? How do you react to change? How do you react to stress? And how do you adapt to with flexibility? So where people often think resilience it becomes a competition on, oh, I could take this. Oh, I've worked till, 1 o'clock in the morning for the last week. And, oh, you know what? I had to, lay off a whole team. Doesn't matter. I can take it. But you know where that leads? Outbursts,
Yeah.
burnouts, which you're seeing across every type of industry today, and just a lot of resentment.
Wow. I'm so happy you said that because that's a great example of kind of the difference between tolerance versus emotional resilience, right? Resilience is like, here's what I can handle,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we wear it almost like a badge of honor, right? Where it's like your example, right? I had to lay off 5, 10 people last week. It's like, and I did it, right? And I handled it. And then that leads to a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, right? Because like we talked about earlier, right, we are emotional beings, right? And we have to somehow regulate those emotions. And so with the emotional resilience, do you think we are lacking emotional resilience in the
Yes.
workplace?
Yes. It's not talked about.
Not talked about.
It's not talked about, not in the proper way,
Mhm.
right?
How is it talked about right now?
In my experience, it's talked about as, what can you deal with? Like we talked about, right? Like, what can you handle? You should be able to handle this, your whatever position it is, right? You handle it, sign off, take a break, but the things that help you excel in being emotionally resilient can be taught, can be practiced. Even if it's not taught by someone else, you as an individual can teach yourself how to be emotionally resilient. So I think that's where the focus should shift, right? Because it's almost like you said, an overlap of like emotional intelligence built in with the soft skills. It's really a combination of those two things, which are talked about, but the resilience is how that's all applied.
Okay. So, what can we do as leaders to improve our emotional resilience?
That's a great question. So I would say it breaks down into three things: your attitude, your behavior, and having a support system. And so when I think about the attitude, it goes back to that self-awareness. I highly, highly recommend Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I always get it for any of my teams just because that focuses a lot on self-awareness. And when I first, in 2015, started learning about emotional intelligence, I realized that I need to think before I speak.
Mm, yes.
And it was like, okay, well, what can I do? I'm now self-aware, but I need to think before I speak. So what can I do to do that? And it was something as simple as I grabbed a water bottle and realized when I started saying, oh my gosh, I'm about to react, I'm about to say something. And I would just open the water bottle and drink it because no one's going to question, okay, she's drinking water, but it gives me that 10 seconds to process and rethink and be self-aware to say, okay, what would be the emotional intelligent way to respond to this? So being aware of how you react, what your triggers are, what stresses you out more than other things, and how to cope with it, that's a huge part. Positive perspective. So I know I've listened to your podcast a little bit now, and one of the things that is so true is around positive mindset. And people think about manifestation. No, it's really positive perspective and seeing the positive in things. You don't have to be, delusional and think that everything is, oh, this is great. There's a silver lining in everything. But it's like, okay, where's that positive perspective? Just like that example I gave you with one of my old directors. It's like, hey, this is a really challenging situation, but what's the positive perspective in this? Well, I have the opportunity to now showcase a gap that I've seen, or if there's a major change where you have to take on a whole new project. Well, what's the positive perspective in that? I get to learn new skills. I get to work with new people. Seeing that really changes how you react to situations. Flexibility, being flexible with your attitude and being empathetic and just keeping learning. Like all those fall under the foundation to me, which is attitude. For behavior, setting healthy boundaries, I think is okay. I think people are afraid to set boundaries at work because you're getting paid to be there. And it's like, well, this is my job. I have to take it. I have to take it. But it's okay to set emotional boundaries. It's okay to say, hey, I need a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with that.
Or, hey, I'm being asked to take on something different or more, and I already feel like I'm at my maximum. So can we work to, being vulnerable, which you talked about, can we work to prioritize my work? Being honest and transparent about that is also a form of setting those boundaries, and then figuring out how to manage your stress, self-care. What do you do for your own self-care?
Mhm.
Some people, might say, okay, during my lunch break, I'm going to go take a walk around, get some sunshine, go in the backyard, or go outside if I'm in the workplace, right? Um, and working on your problem solving skills really is huge for behaviors. And pat yourself on the back, keep track of your successes. So I have a little notepad inside of my Outlook where when I feel like I have a win, I'm like, yeah, this makes me feel good. I just note it there.
This is literally my win notebook right
Oh,
here.
see, there you go. See, you have a win notebook too.
I literally do it every night before I go to bed. I write down the wins that I had that day, and then I plan 3 wins the next day. So I completely agree with that.
Yes, because when you're having a rough day, and we're all our own worst critic, right?
Mhm.
When you feel like, maybe you're like, I didn't have a good pod today, or like this is not great. Having something to reflect and be like, but you know what? I did this, I did this, I did this is huge. And then lastly, when it comes to support systems, something I think people overlook a lot because ego,
Yeah. Mhm.
fear of being vulnerable, is having that support and relationships in the workplace. So find a peer that you can trust, not to badmouth. You never want to badmouth, but bounce things off of. Hey, this is something that I'm facing. Have you faced this before?
Mhm.
What are your ideas? This is my ideas. Do you have anything, any advice? Just being able to talk through it. And again, I want to emphasize a professional manner. And preferably a peer. You do not want to do this with like somebody who reports to you,
Mhm.
and preferably not your boss because they're probably dealing with the same
Yeah.
thing. But hopefully, you have a relationship where you can maybe bring it up
Mhm.
on a one on one or something. But having that, and if you can't have anyone at work, find a friend
Yeah.
or your partner that you can have that relationship. There's a sounding board to lean on, and someone you feel comfortable opening up. There's so much power in just sometimes you just get things off of your chest
Yeah.
and have somebody look at it a different perspective and say, all right, this is what I'm dealing with. How do I move forward?
Mhm. All right.
So
So
yeah,
you just covered like 15 things.
I'm sorry.
No, that was
I'm
incredible.
passionate about all of this.
I really hope anybody who takes time to listen to this is writing those down because I completely agree with everything you said. I love the idea about setting boundary, like your behavior, right? Setting boundaries and having like a routine of self care, right? And understanding what are the things that trigger me, right? What are
Mhm.
the things that actually just kind of stress me out a little bit, right? And that's really important, right? And that goes back into that self awareness that you were talking about earlier, right? And so, and the behavior around like being flexible, right? Being empathetic, right? Like, how do I actually behave as a human being, right? Because that's what people are going to remember about me, right? They're going to remember that behavior because it's ultimately going to make them feel a certain way, right? They're
Mhm.
going to attach some sort of meaning to me. And so, and the other thing that you said that I absolutely loved was about like the positive thinking. And that is something that I think is very, very important because I remember the first time I heard positive thinking, I was like, well, what about when really bad shit happens? I was like, well, what about with that, right? Like, what happens when somebody passes away that you love, or you get in a bad car accident, right? Like, how am I supposed to be positive in that? And then we ended up hearing the term toxic positivity.
Mhm.
Have you heard of that term?
I have, yep. And that's when people are like delusionally, like you're not living and accepting the
Yeah.
negatives and the bad things, which really is just as bad.
Exactly, right. You're not addressing your emotions, right? You're
Absolutely.
completely disregarding them. And so and that was something that once I came across that idea, I was like, okay, now I can see how an event could happen. And we firmly believe, right, events are just events, right, until we give a meaning to them, right? Somebody might see a German Shepherd and think it's a killing machine. Somebody might see a German Shepherd and think it's a beautiful dog, right? It's
Absolutely.
completely the same thing, just different meaning. And so we talk about like gifts and opportunity, right? What is the gift that could come out of this? Right now, we might not see it, right? These and the example that you gave with your with that boss who was vulnerable, she saw that gift, right? She was mentally fit enough to see that gift and say, hey, let me actually show my value. I will create a role. And this is a great opportunity for me to actually customize what I want, right?
Absolutely.
Right? And that is that example of mental fitness. So okay, well, fantastic. I know we're getting close to time here, so I want to ask you one more important question here. Actually, no, I want to ask you two more real quick. All right. What is the greatest challenge that you're currently trying to solve?
Greatest challenge. How do you upskill leaders who are super busy in
Mhm.
a virtual environment, know they need it, but also have competing priorities of, responsibilities for their career and their job? That is huge, right? And I think a lot of people are dealing with that with companies that are cutting back or not hiring as fast, or I think a lot of people right now feel stretched thin,
Mhm.
and like there's a lot going on, and it could be reality for some and it could be just poor time management for others.
Mhm.
But when you are told, hey, I need you to invest in your learning and your development, especially if you're not self-aware enough to know that that's something you need,
Mhm.
how do you make time for it? How do you show the value without, carrot versus stick?
Mhm.
Showing the value, making the time, and committing to your own self-development.
Mhm. I'm really happy you said that. It's like showing the value, right? Because that's one of the things where it's like it's tough sometimes to connect. Hey, if you work on yourself, here's how you're actually going to be better at time management, or here's how
Mm-hmm.
your business is going to be more profitable, right? Or your customers are going to be more loyal to you, right?
Absolutely.
There's a whole journey that needs to be communicated, and then it starts with, hey, let's actually start working on the way we're thinking here, right? Our emotional regulation and things like that. So, okay, awesome. I was just curious about that because I think we talked a little bit about this offline, but we believe L&D specialists are some of the most important people today in supporting the workforce ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
right? And understanding a lot of what we're talking about today. So awesome. So, all right, last question I wanted to ask you, and this is more of a general question. How do you want to be remembered?
Ooh, as someone who led with genuine concern.
Mm. And can you elaborate a little bit more on genuine concern? Because I love that term.
Yes. So, genuine concern is when you are not just asking somebody how you're doing because it's a polite thing to do,
Mhm.
and you're not just going through the motions. You genuinely are leading from a place of care. As you were just saying, L&D specialists and L&D leaders have a very trying job right now with the amount of things that you take on, right? And the responsibility and the outcomes can be so impactful to an organization, either way, right? Positively or negatively, done well or done poorly, it can severely impact an organization. So it's not a job that you get thanks for,
Mhm.
but it's a job that you have to have heart for.
Ooh.
And so that's what I built my career on, is leading with genuine concern. And it's always brought me to wonderful organizations like, Onbe, where I am today, and how learning and development and teaching these core strategies can really shift a culture for the better. So I want to be remembered for leading with genuine concern and teaching others to lead with genuine concern.
Mm. Genuine concern. Let's put that on a t-shirt. Genuine concern. Well, Raina, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate everything we covered, and I'm really looking forward to learning more from you. And this has just been fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, well, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in to this edition of the Acres of Diamonds podcast, where we have powerful conversations with interesting people, and we will talk to you guys soon. We'll see you.